So I'm Paul Hoffschmidt, founder and CEO of Alpha Sophia, and today I'm joined by Daniel Young, co-founder of Digital HealthWorks. Thanks for joining us today. Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Paul, for the invite to join your podcast. This is really fun to talk about digital health and sales and marketing and whatnot. I am from Cleveland originally, excuse me, and have been working in the digital health space since about mid-2000s, where I got my start by founding a product design agency where we were doing hardware and software for medical applications. So these were prototype projects for the most part for places like the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals of Cleveland, some other healthcare institutions, as well as corporates and startups. So over that first 15 years of my work in the digital health space, I've had the chance to work on hundreds of projects. And they ranged in size from small little R&D programs to fairly large applications and systems that were deployed to hundreds of thousands of people. So covered a wide gamut of these projects. But what my observations kind of along the way led me to conclude were that despite the founding team or the funding or the technology that was there, they all seem to be making the same kind of repeatable problems, or I should say, bumping into the same kind of challenges. And those had to do with regulatory strategy, those had to do with commercialization strategy, and understanding how both of those influence the product roadmap. And so a few years ago, I got started again in looking at helping digital health startups and MedTech startups with these three questions. And that became the genesis of the agency that I'm now co-founder of, called Digital HealthWorks.
Yeah, very interesting. And thanks for joining us today. You already provided a little bit of insight about what you do at Digital HealthWorks, but maybe could you explain to a layperson a bit more how your typical process looks like, how you work together with MedTech and digital health startups and supporting them on getting off the ground?
Sure. So to kind of assume that maybe the viewers right now may not have a full understanding of everything involved with the founding stages of a health tech company, but usually when a product or when a technology is developed, it's developed by an institution, or it's developed out of some research, or it's developed out of an innovation program. So it could come from a hospital, it could come from a university, it could come from some sort of a corporate venture or an innovation program or something like that. Excuse me. When those ideas turn into research and development, it goes from concept to something. And usually that something then leads to approvals to build a prototype. Now, prototypes can range in complexity and refinement and things like that, but this is now where the product kind of takes on to a life of its own, and there's a potential to do something with this product. And when I say do something, I want to be purposely vague about that. A lot of institutions they're starting to think about, oh, we need to commercialize this product. Oh, we need to bring this product to patients. Oh, this product's really good for, patient management. There's different kind of like motives and things like that, but that start to push the project forward to take it beyond being a product, but being something else. This is now where we start to get involved with helping companies, because what they are is in essence a product team that has a really good technology, they have a solution, they have something, but they don't necessarily have the visibility into the journey that they're embarking on to understand how to build a business around this product and keep the product in a usable format, but to refine it and evolve it so that it has commercial relevance at a later stage and can actually get into the market and be used and appreciated by those who need it the most. And that could be patients, that could be professional caregivers, that could be clinicians, that could be non-professional caregivers like family members or relatives, that could be for the institutions that are there. So how we begin our process, excuse me, is that we start looking at their product and reflecting to them what their motives in building the product were. What was the opportunity that they saw to get a grant or get some sort of support to get it off the ground. Then we help them understand how their product fits in the universe, so to speak, of the MedTech space. So if it's, let's say, a surgical tool, let's say it's a digital therapeutic, or some sort of remote patient monitoring platform, understanding where your product fits in space helps you understand, how your competitive landscape looks like, what market opportunities are there, but more importantly, how people are going to judge your product and assign value to it, which is the driving force of how you end up later being able to sell the product. So we start asking these questions and start helping people become more self-aware at an early TRL phase, or technology readiness level phase, if you would, so that the decisions that they make from that point forward are thoughtful and are structured to coordinate, the commercial realities that they're going into with the desired clinical outcome of their product, with the regulatory requirements that are needed to reflect and manage the safe and proper development of that product.
Okay,
And then,
understood.
no, go
So
ahead.
basically, already from the start, you look from both sides, from the motives that drove the team developing that product, so the initial problem encounter they usually had, but then also from the ultimate user and the person or the organization that should apply the technology later on, and see whether those two incentives basically line up, so that a product is being developed that is actually being used later on, and that not something is built which misses the market.
Yeah, and the hard reality of the medtech space is that, you're talking like greater than 80% of projects that start off in the medtech space as an idea for a product end up failing as a business. And so the attrition rate in this industry is extremely high. And there are many reasons why it is, but they kind of come down into certain categories, in that teams misjudge what the relevant milestones they need to cross in order to reach a commercial potential. They don't appreciate the team that they need to build around it, and they don't appreciate how to steer the product roadmap in an appropriate way that can combine, those commercial realities with regulatory guardrails, so to speak, and still be able to achieve the mission. So along this journey, we have kind of developed a skill set on our team to be able to provide these kinds of insights at different waypoints as somebody goes along in their journey, from that startup phase well beyond getting their FDA clearance or their CE mark, but really deep into the commercial market.
Understood. And you already shared a few traps companies or founding teams might fall into onto the path towards bringing a medtech or digital health product successfully to market. Maybe from your experience on the other side, what are three success factors for teams that succeed, that usually stand out for those teams?
Summarizing three choices is somewhat difficult because it takes a lot more than just three. But I think fundamentally, one of the most important things a team needs to have is have economic evidence of the value of their product. Full stop. Because if the product that they're producing or fielding doesn't make financial sense for all of the stakeholders involved, nobody or few people will want to pay money for it or support a reimbursement structure around that. You can have, so like, to give you an example, you can develop a product that has really strong clinical evidence that it does something positive. However, if that product isn't positioned in the right way to deliver value to the healthcare system, it won't get adopted. Full stop. And this is something, it's hard for, I'm sorry, but it's hard for a lot of researchers, product people, and especially clinicians to get their arms around, because they've been trained that if there's a technology and it can save lives, let's use it. But the fact is that those people aren't necessarily privy to all of the potential products that had been developed and failed before that could have had an amazing impact on saving lives. So this is something that a lot of those teams did not produce enough evidence to demonstrate value to the right stakeholders and demonstrate to them, this is why you should invest in reimbursements or pay for this product or incorporate it into your product. So that's number one. Number two is also burning through your capital way too fast. So another example of where people trip up is on thinking that when they get FDA or CE stamps on their product or on their website, that's 90% of the battle. In fact, I would say that's probably 10%, and they still have 90% to go. So companies, the second success factor I would say is about companies understanding that the regulatory milestone is but the start, not the finish, and reserving capital and developing a capital efficient runway to go well beyond getting FDA clearance or the CE mark to have time to operate into the market and be able to make the partnerships and connections, which is the third thing I would say that's a huge success factor, are companies that are able to develop meaningful partnerships at the right stage on their roadmap. So this is a topic that I've talked about in some of the presentations that I've given over the past couple of years about the importance of partnerships. Companies and startups, I think, when I say companies and startups, I'm talking about corporates partnering with startups, partnering with corporates and or insurance companies or things like that. There's a really misunderstanding or lack of understanding or clarity about how to develop a healthy, productive, mutually beneficial partnership. And those companies that understand that and how to identify and extract value from a partnership are going to be more successful because you can't do it alone, and you really need partners, different partners at different stages, but you need partners all along the journey.
Understood. Relating this to your work at Digital HealthWorks, at which point do you usually come in supporting companies on that roadmap and hitting those success factors and supporting them not only on the regulatory path but then also with commercialization later on?
Where we would like to get involved would be at a much earlier state. However, the reality of the market is that we usually get involved when the company realizes that they maybe have taken a slight detour and need to have a pilot guide them back on course. So usually it happens, we get involved when the prototype is pretty solid and now there seems to be like a high level of seriousness about turning this into a commercial product. That's when we can get involved. And usually what we like to do is we like to work with clients on two different perspectives, on what the commercial realities are and for them to understand that, and then translate that into product and regulatory requirements. So the regulatory requirement might be something like verification and validation tests that you need to demonstrate that it's going to be clinically effective. It could have to do with, like, let's say that there's a predicate that the FDA had already given clearance to, so you could do a 510K approach with that. But what they cleared would then have an influence on the product. This is how they did it before. This is how you might want to do it. Did you do it right? These kinds of things. And also understanding too, the back office support, kind of like tier 1, tier 2 support. Like, what if something goes wrong with your product? How are you going to resolve that problem? And so it becomes kind of a bit on the organization side on delivering the product as much as the product features. But these things have to be in place in order for there to be a possibility to bring it to the market. So they're all intertwined, and the nuance of what gets priority is really relative to where the company is at that point in time in their journey. But I like to start by following the money, because if there's no money at the end of the journey, then there needs to be some hard conversations and hard decisions made early on. But if there's money there and there's a path to that money, or I should say a reverse path back to where the company is in time and space, then we start to move forward with developing that strategy and outlining the implications of what might have to be done with the product and what a regulatory strategy might be suitable. And then we can support the companies on the regulatory and the product side.
Okay, med device folks, picture this. What if you could open up a CRM today and it already contained information for every potential lead for you in the country? And you could narrow down those leads further by looking at billing, location, seniority, so much more. Alpha Sophia is the strategy tool that we wish we had had when we were commercializing a medical device in the US market. But there's nothing stopping you. So visit alphasophia.com and learn more.
Yeah, understood. On that journey, when it comes to the commercialization of the product, what are typical recommendations you give to MedTech and digital health companies? And I assume they are quite different in their or can be different in their marketing approach and sales approach. But would you rather recommend starting small with one nucleus in one geographic area, or rolling out to the whole country right from the beginning? What's your game plan there, or is it different all the time?
Well, let's roll back to the first question when you asked me to introduce myself and my company. There's one thing I did not really dig into there, is that we are an international company. We're based in Massachusetts, but we have an operation in Berlin. And we work with companies in the EU going to the US, and companies in Germany going into the German market. We have US companies going into the US market, US companies coming to Europe, Israeli companies coming to Europe and the US, Singapore companies, so on. So we have to be on top of both the US market and the European market, specifically biased towards Germany. And I say this because this is a hyper relevant fact to your question about what medtech or what market is suitable for a medtech or digital health startup, and how to best develop a commercialization strategy. It really always depends on what the product is, what the intended use is for the product, and who's the target user, the beneficial user, the buyer, the payer, and the influencer, which are basically, in our minds, the 5 people that are involved in this whole process. So usually going for a whole anything is a bad idea. This is a kind of an inefficient use of capital, because you're going to get too diluted and unfocused. Usually what I like to recommend is understand who's going to benefit the most from your product, where your value will have the greatest impact and will unlock the most amount of money. It's kind of sounds obvious and simple, but it's something that requires a lot of thought. Like, for example, digital therapeutics are problematic. In some places, we have, like, on a grand scale, we have a company like Pear Therapeutics that went bankrupt, some time ago, because they overshot and they tried to be overambitious, but they didn't demonstrate enough value to payers in the U.S. market, and so they stumbled and then scrambled to look for other places and ultimately failed. But you have other digital therapeutic companies that knew exactly what they were doing and recognized it. Like, there's one small startup out of Singapore that was designed a digital therapeutic with a companion hardware app, or I should not say hardware app, but a wearable designed for people who had a knee replacement surgery and a post-surgical or post-operative recovery program. It is a digital therapeutic, and it's super focused, and it's going to be super successful. Because they understood what they were getting into. They found a specific problem, they solved it, or they improved it, and they demonstrated value for that product. So this is kind of the thing. And now they're going international, and they're being selective about which markets that they want to go into, that has all of the checklists of how to go into that market. So this is one example. Another thing too is, like, when you're going to develop a sales or marketing program, you need to know who you're selling to, and how you're going to sell to them. For example, to try to sell like a complicated medical product, maybe technology enabled or not, you have to understand that you can't just sell something to a doctor who after talking to 50 doctors and them all saying, "Oh, I like this product. This product seems really useful. I'd use it." But in the reality is that they're not going to use it right away. You have a long preparatory cycle that you have to, amass, the clinical relevance, demonstrate how the product works, build in your explainability for the product, do medical onboarding and training of the physician, be able to find the exact places on the care path where you're going to deploy that product or that technology. How the doctor could then prepare to use it, and then move on after the fact using it, and then to evaluate, did the patient respond positively or negatively to that intervention, and then to be able to then move that patient in a different trajectory on their care path. And then after that, have continued re-education of the physicians, and then possibly multiple trainings and certifications down the line. So it's a really significant program to get clinicians to use this, and to demonstrate that it's worth giving up something in their daily routine to adopt something new. And then they're going to extract the benefit from it that ultimately will benefit patients and benefit their practice. So that program in place or planned out, then it's outreach and knowing, how to address those people and how to pitch it comes from two things. One, from having this understanding of the journey that that physician will be on is the first thing. And the second thing is knowing what are the relevant clinicians to contact. And that's obviously one of the things I love about your product is that it's super sophisticated in identifying the most relevant professional caregivers and clinicians that would be likely interested in that technology or that intervention. So that becomes the second part, and then knowing how to communicate with them is a function of all of the planning and the work behind there to understand what kind of questions they're going to be asking, how to deal with objections, how to communicate value, and more importantly, how to bring them in and lock them in as a long-term client.
Yeah, and and it's of course there's the data side, but there's also an art side involved to that, because often when you do targeting, you want to think in terms of course, direct signals, like are those physicians performing the procedures which correspond to the product I want to sell, but then also more soft factors, like is this person rather innovative? Is he probably likely to respond to a message? What kind of messaging probably resonates with that person? And then those are factors where you probably look at other indicators, like are those people publishing in the field? Are they active on social media? Do they have a track record of working with other innovative companies? Have they co-developed solutions in the past, and so on, to get an understanding of the persona behind that physician, and then ultimately be able to not only target purely from a top-down sales target perspective, but sell to the persona behind that.
Indeed, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I could restate what you just said, but you said it very well.
And maybe on a higher level, with your experience in the industry, are there any high level trends you are seeing in the MedTech, in the digital health world, that are developing over the last years, or which you see on the horizon coming up in the next years?
From a technology perspective or the business perspective, or both?
Both. We can do both.
Well, one thing that I think is a huge part of the industry is that there's going to be a move towards consolidation in the digital health and MedTech space. And I think a lot of it's driven by the fact that, well, it depends on which industry you're in, and I don't want to get too generic with this because everything's relative. But in general, single point solutions or single point service offerings are going to be have a hard time, I think, in the near future. They are having it now, but it's just going to exacerbate more in the next couple of years. Reason being because there's so many new startups producing so many cool, innovative technologies, but there's only a fixed number of buyers. Because we have to keep in mind how many new hospitals start up every year. How big is the market expanding when it comes to potential consumers of system level technologies? Therefore, it becomes a very difficult prospect to get a hold of somebody to be able to pitch your idea or pitch your product and look for adoption. So many similar technologies, I think, are going to be consolidated under one roof or as an embedded part of a bigger system. That way, the contracting process of one party getting into a hospital system, that could bring 20 solutions in, is going to probably get a bit more respect than a single point solution provider. So that is a trend that's already, I think, underway. It's definitely in certain markets and certain segments more matured than others. But it's something to look out for, and it's something to factor in for your kind of like business planning, if you would, if you're in that position. The second big influential trend, I think, is a move away from facility-based care to personalized in-home care. This is something that definitely in the U.S. since the COVID pandemic has developed a huge amount of momentum, and potentially will just continue to, I don't want to say hockey stick, but it's probably the best analogy I can think of, because it makes so much sense for patients, it makes sense for providers, and it makes sense for the delivery of care. it's just a great system, and I'm a big fan of it. And I've been looking at it in that space for 3-4 years now, and I'm a convert as like this is the way people should be receiving health. Plus, I'm also biased because my grandfather, who was a physician, he was an OBGYN and delivered a lot of babies, spent many, many nights making house calls. And the patients were always very grateful, and the outcomes were almost always positive. I mean, obviously, there were acute cases that needed to bring into the hospital. But for the most part, that was where care began. And then it got institutionalized and centralized. And now the pendulum is swinging back towards getting care back in the home because of the technologies that enable being able to deliver ambulatory care, equipment, medicines, nutrition, things like that to patients where they live and they're most comfortable. So I say that because it's relevant for a digital health or MedTech company about the choices about where their products are going to be used and consumed. A lot of people that I talk to are still thinking in the mindset of this is a GP, this is the practice, this is the room. I mean, I know those aren't going away, or the hospital types of setting, but they're not talking about this home setting. How can their technology be used in this third setting? And that's a big opportunity for companies that design their product to fit into this new world. Now, granted, this is developing, and in the U.S., there's a lot of money going into companies like Medically Home. General Catalyst is bought a small hospital system as a test bed for I think digital health delivery mechanisms and stuff like that. But suffice it to say, this is where people need to be thinking consolidation and this in-home care. Now, one thing I do want to clarify, consolidation may or may not mean you have to sell out your company, but it's definitely going to mean your distribution channels and your path to market are going to be different. So, for example, I use the radiology space as my example here. There are multiple companies producing radiology AI models for things like oncology, different kinds of indications. They can't sell cardiology or something like that. They can't necessarily sell a single point solution into a hospital system and integrate with their PAC system, be able to expect that they're going to, be able to stand up like that. But the distribution is controlled by certain third-party marketplaces like DeepSea, for example, down in or over in Munich, I should say. They've already gone through the hard work of negotiating with the hospitals, deploying their systems to integrate with the PAC system, and so they've got the in and out, and they also have the cloud infrastructure where radiology AI models can be deployed in mass. So companies that are producing a model, like let's say with glioblastoma, wouldn't necessarily need to sell that directly to the hospital in one shot. What they would do is they would deploy it in a marketplace like DeepSea or Incepto or some of the other ones that are there. They would be the distribution channel into the hospital, and they would also handle the money, so to speak, when reimbursement is paid, that they would pay out to the publishers. But the publishers, the ones who make the model, still have an obligation and a requirement to sell directly to the radiologists. It's just that when the radiologist makes a decision to use that technology, they're going to be going through this distribution channel by dragging a drop-down menu. Drop-down menu is maybe not the right way to say it, but being able to access that model through the DeepSea integration in their local PAC system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it's interesting just to hear about that shift. The shift first from inpatient to now a higher outpatient share, and then as you explained that in the future, even more in the in-home care setting. So Daniel, one last closing question today. What is your main priority for Digital Healthworks over the course of the next 6 months, next year?
Well, a couple things. As I kind of you picked up on, I'm advocating this kind of move towards personalized home-based care, and I think it's influential. So one of the things as an agency we're trying to do is bring awareness as to like this is a great market and opens up new doors for startups that might be struggling with traditional reimbursement, that there are other opportunities to make money. And so that is at a core influencing what our primary mission is, but to really help companies break out of the mold of what they're, or I should say the routine of being in a mindset where getting reimbursed directly from an insurance company and having to build out this big product is the only way we can go to market. So opening minds about there's other ways to commercialization that might not be so obvious. Now, In that, of course, we were going to have our services of the regulatory, the commercialization, advisory, and then the product development. And so as a company, by promoting a focused vision on there, we plan to continue to promote the work that we're doing with the clients that we've got, and then also being able to grow the agency. I mean, this year's been a good year of growth for us, and now we're kind of locked and loaded on scaling the agency. Without going too fast, because we still want to be able to deliver a high quality and a high value of our services. But strategically speaking for us, it's really to promote that vision and to continue to scale the agency and to demonstrate relevance to the stakeholders that we're working with.
Yeah, and I wish you the utmost success with that. Looking forward to continuing and to watch your journey, also together with Romy, who's your co-founder. Daniel, it was a lot of fun having you on the pod today. Thanks for joining us, and looking forward to continuing our discussion at some point in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
Can you afford to have a rep in every county, or do you need to be hyper-targeted in your outreach? Do you need to know information about your targets going in to be successful, or do you have years and years before you want to close that deal? If you want to be focused, if you want to deliver fast, you should visit alphasophia.com and help your sales team out.